action.
The clacker. So on this one, why are you like trying to do weird things?
Well, I'm trying to... Good posture.
I am not boring at all.
No, okay.
All right,
Let's
so
start with introduction? No?
I always hate those on videos.
Okay. So we just start...
So, what?
Go on.
I'm just saying, I hate those. Hey, my name's not in the title, or here, or this channel thing. Let me say the same thing, and if you're binging this, I'm going to hear it 60 times in a row.
I don't like it either.
But we were having a conversation about the where to start with homeschooling, especially unschooling, which is what we do.
Yeah.
And just a conversation around that. I think some of the big differences, and don't let me dominate the conversation, some of the big differences between homeschooling and unschooling and public school is with public school and homeschool, they kind of look very similar. Just one is the parent is the facilitator instead of a teacher. But with unschooling, we're kind of undoing a lot of the social conditioning that happens when they're...
Deschooling. We're deschooling them from a normal, what they normally get at a public school.
But what does deschooling mean to you? When you say deschooling, for people that aren't familiar with unschooling, what is deschooling?
So deschooling is not doing standardized tests, not focusing around the standardized tests that they give a lot in public schools, especially where we live in our state. Deschooling takes away from the standardized tests, takes away from the normal schedule that you get from 8 to 2 at an elementary school.
8 to 2? Is it really 8 to 2?
No, majority of them are 8 to 2.
Wow.
Yeah, or...
That's such a long time.
Yeah. The kids were 750 to 150. So, yeah, 8 to 2.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's 6 hours. I mean, yeah, they get, maybe one recess. They get specials like art or music, PE, but it's not enough. So deschooling from regular schooling is not having standardized tests, not having a schedule like you have at a normal elementary school. It is a way of just learning what they want to learn. So if one is interested in math, then we keep pushing the math and focusing on the math and doing games around it. If another one's interested in art and just wants to do art, we do stuff around it.
What if I'm only interested in playing Fortnite? Is that something that they get to do with unschooling?
No. Nope. That is not, no way.
I mean, I think you would have that problem regardless. That's not in the scope of homeschooling, public schooling, unschooling, because that's just how long do you let your child have screen time.
Yeah.
And that varies with our other unschooling friends, where some of them do 0, some of them do a very little bit. We kind of do it's like a flex. Like, what did they do today? Are they going to be using it for entertainment? Are they going to be using it for education?
Yeah.
So we're not I feel like we're the less rigid of some of the unschooling.
We're also tech family here.
So they all have their own technology too. So it's true.
We have a lot of tech.
Coding is part of our curriculum.
Yes.
For all children.
Mm-hmm. For the STEM part,
Right.
For the technology.
So unschooling or deschooling, I'm sorry, that's what we're talking about, is this idea of not fitting a very specific model of the child, right? And not that that's wrong or right? It's personal preference. All these things are personal preference too, by the way.
Yeah.
One thing I think is cool is learning about these topics and being because we learned about some homeschooling and we were very interested in that strong curriculum, and then wait, that's not the lifestyle that we have. That's not what we want.
No.
But getting educated on it, I think, is a big portion to finding one that's really going to work for you to be successful. Because I think to be successful, you need to educate yourself. And what are your goals for your children? It's almost not habitual, but intentional.
Yeah.
In its efficacy.
like your priorities. What are your priorities? What are your goals with your children and their homeschooling at home? You know, for us, it was great having conversations with friends when I first started that, you know, we're homeschooling. I was learning about the different ways of homeschooling and then unschooling. And, you know, for us, it fits, like unschooling was better for us because we work on our own schedule. We don't have to worry about like 3 kids and now we're sitting down and now I am teaching and all 3 of them different curriculums for their different age group, and then I still have to get things done like, you know, chores and cooking and
but we incorporate them
yes.
as part of our homeschooling curriculum. I know this sounds crazy that you're thinking of school and home together. Homeschool, that's a little ironic, right? Like I just thought about that. But like we do chores as a part of life skill building.
Yes.
So it's not mom and dad do all the cooking, cleaning, maid, butler.
No.
But we intentionally have them involved in almost every aspect of our life.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Like, you know, today we had a life event that we're like, okay, this is an opportunity to teach you guys. So,
Is that enough outside time?
Yeah, that's fine. That's enough outside time.
Make sure you guys drink water.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. All right,
Yeah.
me and mom are going to finish up here, okay?
Go upstairs.
If you want stuff.
We'll get in a little bit, okay? So
You were talking about we had a life event, so you start from
oh yeah.
here.
So we had a life event happen recently where our tire pressure was low and the symbol came on in the car, and that was a great opportunity to go ahead and bring all 3 kids outside and teach them what the symbol means when it's in a car, inside of a car, and then how do you take care of that.
Right. So more than these are things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I know personally, I've seen a lot of friends and especially younger friends that something goes wrong with their vehicle and they have zero clue. And I think if you step back a little bit and you think of what is the role of educating and preparing our children, you know, for me, it is that they have the life skills by the time that, you know, they leave the nest, that they can go off and do whatever they want to.
Yeah.
And if you know absolutely nothing about events like this that happen, I don't feel like for me that I've fully prepared them to go out and tackle the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went outside, we took the air pressure gauge and we checked the air pressure. They each got to take the air compressor and fill up the tires. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool seeing them interact with it and be interested. It's not something that we're going to have them, you know, we're not going to open up a 7-Eleven mechanic shop and have them, you know, checking people's air pressure, but
it's a life skill they need to have because, you know, our oldest in a few years, like what, 5 years, he's going to be 16, start driving.
But I don't think it's that. No, he will probably not be driving at 16. But I'm just saying, I wouldn't count it like that.
No.
Like, I feel like you're highlighting it a little too much.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying, like, I feel like it is. Like, it is figuring out, hey, here's a problem. It is really much more focused on how do we close the door to the washing machine so that there's not that noise playing every single 5 minutes.
I think the door was closed.
That is very loud.
It is very loud. I'm glad we can edit this.
Yeah. It's really much more of a focus on, like, how do you go about and troubleshoot life? How do you learn to think? And that's why when something like this happens, we don't stick very hard, keeping it very focused on the unschooling. We don't keep it focused on what was today's curriculum, what was today's plan. Some people are like that. We aren't those people. And so this is what it allows us to do, is pick and choose. Maybe some people are more legalistic and they want that very refined, rigid schedule. This allows you to have that. Maybe some people are a little bit more relaxed and they're more artistic and they want to kind of go with the vibe and the flow. This allows that.
Yeah,
And
it's a great flavor for us.
right, it's our, we get to pick our own flavor, right? Like Baskin Robbins. You know,
Yeah.
we don't get to get, well, this is the flavor of your choice. We get to actually try some different flavors, find out what we like, and really like dial in to not only our own family, but to each children as well. Everyone gets a little bit of the dial.
Yeah, and then like with the cooking, they're learning how to cook. They're reading because they have to read the recipe. They have to use the measurements to, for the recipe so they can cook. So that's math. That they're doing a lot with the cooking.
I'm really impressed too with having to tell them no because they're asking to do more complicated than I'm personally comfortable with. I see the oven get turned on and I'm instantly like warning sirens going off in the back of my head. But it's still part of like the experience.
Yeah.
It's really cool, especially like because you're with them way more than I am, and I get to jump in for like some cool, sexy bits of hey, let's do coding, let's do this automobile thing. I'm not there for the day-to-day grind of every little aspect, but we go to a trip and they're reading stuff that's crazy. Their conversation level, because they're around adults more, they're having more intelligent conversations. It's interesting. And I also like that when you go to a public school, you don't know who your children are playing with. I remember Leo coming back home and telling us some things that he had learned from other students. I'm like, that is not appropriate at your age level for
Yes.
our children.
Yes, that's correct. And now, when they're home, and you meet up with other homeschoolers, you're involved with your kids and these other kids that they're playing with.
Right, they're not playing with strangers. That's what a kid you don't know is a stranger, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but
Yeah.
also when they're coming home talking about topics that are above their level of maturity,
Yes,
it's
that's not
wildly
okay.
inappropriate. Wildly inappropriate. So another piece with the homeschooling, or I'm sorry, the unschooling, is getting to delegate and teach leadership that I don't feel they were getting previously. And what I mean by that is like incorporating the older children into the younger children's programs.
Yeah, having that's teaching them patience, empathy, with each other, because if it's, let's say, the youngest that he doesn't know what they're doing, the oldest, but he has to be a part of it. Like he has to learn patience and empathy towards, and then the older kids have to learn empathy as well. They have to cooperate with each other.
And another thing that I really like is they get to see how hard it is for you teaching a subject.
Yeah.
I've really noticed that their patience is changing because they're like, why don't you read this? And he's like, I don't know the alphabet. And he's seeing that, when you're trying to learn something new and someone's you're trying to teach someone to learn something new, how hard it is sometimes. And the challenges of teaching someone the way that they can learn and understand it, that's a different skill. And while I think you do much better than I do with the patience portion with them, they're learning patience because they're being incorporated in another child. And it doesn't mean you're not just having Leo teach the other two younger ones, are you?
No, not like he's not in charge of the two younger ones. No.
Yeah, but sometimes we have to remind him that he's not in charge of the two younger ones.
Because he feels like he's compelled, because he's the oldest, that he has to be the more responsible and.
Right, but it does allow for him to get some experience, and we rotate. You know, sometimes we put Claudius in charge, the youngest one. Sometimes we put the middle one in charge, and we want them all to learn leadership, how to be a worker. So they're not just little tyrants running around, but also they're learning empathy when you're in a leadership position, how hard it could be to have to get a project done, and people who are either unskilled or unmotivated, and they're learning these skills now, not 30 years now. And it helps with when we have to delegate out tasks that they understand there's a time that we want them to give input.
Yeah.
There's a time that we want them to, we are on a very short deadline. This is the checklist. Right now is no longer, because we try to incorporate, like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Nothing will get done if you only do that, though. So we this is always a refinement process.
Yes.
But it allows for that soil, that fertile soil, these plants to get planted, and for that to flourish. So that's another reason with unschooling, keeping it very specific to unschooling, that I personally enjoy. But I'm seeing so much fruit.
Mm-hmm. And I love that they use their imagination all the time, because being at home and not having a curriculum and not following a curriculum and deschooling them, we give them a lot of free time to use their imagination. They're making forts. They're, running around, talking about, oh, I'm the king and you're the princess, and just like fun stories. They're being adventurous.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, not having any siblings around me at the time, and having to play with like dandelions. Like I would take flowers and make my own little toys. And one problem that I noticed with our oldest specifically was whenever he was playing a lot of video games, it seemed like his imagination level started to decrease.
Yes.
And it was a very big wake-up call that we noticed the younger ones were kind of out imagining him. And now that we've tweaked and dialed, because that's part of the homeschooling process, is finding what works for you, finding what works for your family, tweaking and tuning and dialing.
Yeah.
And when we started to do that, I really started to see that his imagination was wakening back up. It was like it had been asleep.
Oh my gosh. What a wake up.
So we were talking about Leo and his imagination waking it back up.
Yeah.
After a slight technical difficulty. I might edit this a lot less and let it be more raw.
Raw material.
We'll see how that goes. Might be a terrible idea. It also feels like this room's a little boomy. We need maybe some more things in here.
But the audio sounded great.
Did it?
When we first, no, I didn't check the camera, but
that's fine.
The Yeti.
Yeah, I can't wait for that Elgato one though. Just because I like tech. I'm a technologist. It's very cool.
I can't wait
it's
for
very
the green
pretty,
screen. It's pretty.
So, going back to unschooling and where you get started with unschooling, or just not where you get started with unschooling, it can be a little daunting. But just what unschooling is, I think, is what we really wanted to talk about here. As we go forward with more and more content, we want to really educate the community around what we have, what we're building, and remember that your most valuable treasures are your children.
Yes.
And I would not trust a stranger with educating or with my most valuable assets and hoping from the bottom of my heart that they're doing a good job. That's just not where my mindset is at.
I mean, well, when they were in public school, I was part of the PTSA. I was in the board because I was there most of the time. I would go on their field trips. I would room parent, help the teachers out.
And not that teachers are doing a bad job.
Yeah. Our teachers were amazing.
Right.
I love you all.
Just for us and our lifestyle.
Yeah, and just because we started, last year when we started homeschooling, we were traveling a lot. We were always on the road.
We have the luxury because I work remotely
Yeah.
that we can do that. I know that's not everyone where they're at, but especially if you're now working remote, especially if you're trying to be a working parent, maybe a working single parent, and you think this is not within your means to grab, that's really not true. We do less. We talked about the 8 to 12 earlier. We do less. 8 to 2, 8 to 12. We do some range that I find wildly inappropriate.
Like 6 hours. Tennessee was almost 8 hours
No, my gosh.
of school.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that for a second. It was so strenuous that they had a what was it called? Kinder first?
Pre-first. I think.
Pre-first, where if you didn't do good enough in kindergarten, but you weren't ready for first grade, they added an additional grade. It was so bad that Leonidas was in kindergarten at a table with a whole bunch of other kids who were not allowed to do recess because they had to study more.
Yeah.
And he would come home asking, why was he a dumb kid? And like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't get recess. I'm at this table learning more. I'm at the dumb table. Like, it's not the dumb table. Very, very in tune with his surroundings. And basically, it was the dumb table. And those kids started getting like pulled out of school.
Not the done table. It was kids that needed extra.
If you didn't enroll your
work.
child in 2 to 3 years pre-kindergarten, you would not pass this curriculum.
Yeah, it's because of the county too that we lived in. It was very high with their grades.
It's insane. It's insane because let me continue.
Yeah.
So he then was the only kid at the dumb table. I'm gonna keep calling it the dumb table because it wasn't. I mean, that's essentially what it is, right? The less intelligent table, the you can't keep up with your work table. And he was the only kid because everyone else got pulled out of it, and he was really, really distraught. I mean, super anxious around it. We moved to Florida, and he had already done in half a year all the way through first grade and a half. Mm-hmm. And he was like, instantly, with him getting those victories because he'd already done the work, this is easy stuff. He was instantly
like a winner. He
was like, "Oh, I'm a king again." That is the difference of building confidence, and that's another thing with unschooling. That's the difference of building confidence. Yeah. I think the coffee's hitting. That's the difference with building confidence and micro wins versus a system that may allow some to thrive and they really resonate with it, but others that don't. All of a sudden, they're getting injected with defeats, and I think everyone should learn to accept defeat and failure is okay, but not on a consistent basis, and you need wins to establish what winning feels like as well.
Yeah.
So that system did not work for him. This kid, at 10 years old, right now, time of this recording, he knows how to code, he's learning Photoshop, very empathetic. I mean, you tell him a sad story, he cries with you. He's very emotionally in tune with other people. He reads. He loves doing PowerPoints, which death by PowerPoint isn't a joke that he gets yet. But not a dumb child. Has very deep, meaningful, intelligent conversations. The system did not work for him.
Yeah. So that's why unschooling, you're learning with your child to see where they're at. You're learning that, okay, he might not be reading right now, but eventually he's going to want to read. So he's going to read a year from now, and that's okay. You have, it's more relaxed. It's more of let's work on what your strengths are, and then when, the weaknesses that you have, eventually you're going to want to learn because you're going to want the knowledge of it. Like our youngest with the reading.
Right. So, unschooling, just to summarize and to wrap this video up, it's gone long enough. What unschooling is, in my opinion, correct me if you think I'm wrong, is instead of a one-size-shoe-fits-all, it is really allowing to dial in to the needs, and you can't drop that cup or it's going to make a doop doop very loud. The needs of the child. And by needs of the child, everyone needs something different.
Yeah.
Everyone needs something different to thrive, and it's really allowing you to dial into that. The only thing I can think of to best compare it to is when you pick your own clothes, when you become an adult, and you're like, oh, I finally have this job at McDonald's, and I can go buy all the fancy clothes I want. What fancy means to you is wildly different than what fancy means to someone else. And when you go and pick out your clothes, when you go buy your own things, you now have your own style.
Yeah, unschooling's your own style. I like that.
That just came off the top of the head. All right.